For years, digital nomads have flocked to Southeast Asia for the low cost of living and the great weather. But today, I'm going to tell you why wealthy people should be just as inclined to live in Southeast Asia. And I'm going to explain 9 reasons why a 7 or 8-figure entrepreneur or investor, the types of people that Nomad Capitalist works with, might love having a home in Southeast Asia. Keep in mind, you can have a home in Southeast Asia or anywhere in the world and live there 12 months a year, 6 months a year, 3 months a year, in some cases 1 day a year. It could just be a backup plan. But let's go through the reasons why this could be a place that is one of your homes or your main home. And the first reason is healthcare. A lot of people ask about this. People in places like the United States are paying through their teeth for healthcare. It is not only extremely affordable in Southeast Asia, but it is of extremely high quality. The large majority of countries that score well for medical tourism are in Asia. And so you have some of the best hospitals in Southeast Asia in particular, from Gleneagles in Singapore to Sambitavej or Bumrungrad in Bangkok. Prince Court, we've talked about a lot, in Kuala Lumpur. And it's getting better elsewhere. I can tell you I've been going to Cambodia for a dozen years. And when I first was there, I'm like, I hope nothing happens to me because it could be more dicey. Now you have better healthcare facilities. So the entire region that they call ASEAN, that's a group of Southeast Asian countries, is getting better. But your Singapores, Malaysias, Thailands, and to some extent the Philippines all score very well for healthcare. It's extremely affordable. You can go and check out our numerous episodes where I took my entire staff that came to Nomad Capitalist Live to Prince Court for an annual checkup. It costs pennies on the dollar to what you'd pay in the US, and it's much more efficient. So it's efficient, smiley, affordable healthcare, great quality, great doctors trained overseas. The second thing is just better health in general. Not all the countries, but if you look elsewhere in Asia, Japan is one of the healthiest countries by many metrics in terms of just the types of calories they consume and the foods they eat. Thailand also scored relatively well on that in terms of the countries with the healthiest food. Now you can eat healthy anywhere, but if you look at most of the English-speaking legacy brand countries, US at the top and then the UK, Australia, and Canada, the majority of your calories are coming from ultra-processed foods. You can avoid that, but it's harder. And so it's a lot easier to avoid that. It's a lot easier to eat healthy. The food is often of higher quality in countries, in a lot of places in the world, including Southeast Asia. The third reason is the weather. Not everybody loves the humidity, although there are plenty of places in Southeast Asia that are in the mountains, for example, parts of Thailand, you'll have less humidity, you'll have cooler weather. But you have everything from mountain life to island life to city life. And the weather in most parts of the region is nice year-round. You're not going to have cold snaps in the winter. I spend my winters in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and I'm able to then go and do business all throughout Asia, manage my money throughout Asia. I'll come back to both of those points later. But it's a great place to go. If you want to wear shorts, if you want to wear linen in January, you can do that. It is not the eternal spring that Medellin, Colombia is, for example, but you've got warm weather up to hot weather all year round. So your swimming pool is in use 12 months a year in many parts of Southeast Asia. And you have places where if you live in a condo, even if you build your own house or buy your own house, you have those things. I mean, unlike a lot of places in Europe, not only do you have air conditioning, but it works. I remember I landed in Kuala Lumpur, was it a year or two ago, when Germany was going through all of its power problems. People couldn't run their air conditioning in the middle of the summer. It was working perfectly well at affordable prices at my home in Kuala Lumpur, and they have that kind of stuff. They have pools, they have AC, much more commonly than you find in the high-tax countries of Europe, for example. The fourth reason to live in Southeast Asia, if you are a wealthy person, is the lower levels of crime. Singapore is always in the top 10. They have basically the lowest homicide rate in the world outside of tiny, tiny, tiny countries. Overall, Singapore is extraordinarily safe, on par with some of the Middle Eastern places. You get, Dubai and Qatar and Bahrain and Oman always score very well. If you don't want to live in that part of the world, Singapore is right up there as well, always has been. Even Cambodia ranks safer than the US overall for crime. A lot of countries do. Homicide rates in general are lower, not only than the US, whose homicide rate is not that low, but Australia has a relatively low homicide rate. A lot of the Southeast Asian countries are safer than that in terms of violent crime. Property crimes, certainly is measured from place to place. I've never had any particular issues. Every country in the region except the Philippines has a lower homicide rate than the US. So for violent crime, you're not as likely to have it there. The next reason high net worth nomad capitalists should consider Southeast Asia is the easy visa policies. Now by easy, I mean less bureaucracy, more straightforward, very welcoming, and more importantly, non-judgmental. Generally speaking, Asian countries don't really care where you come from. So we can say, listen, you could be Russian and you could be against the war. And yet a lot of places in the world don't want to let you move there. They don't want you to be able to go where you're treated best. And I think there's a number of countries that the Western world kind of frowns on or they treat differently. Asia pretty much is, did you meet the criteria? You're in. And I'm not saying there's not paperwork. Obviously, we help our clients do all sorts of paperwork and where to submit it and, powers of attorney to make things go faster, all that kind of stuff. But the visas are more straightforward. The residence permits can be longer than other parts of the world, and they generally want to see some kind of investment. So Latin America is, do you have a salary? Asia, just kind of as a basic idea, is, are you investing money? Can you put a couple $100,000 in the bank? Can you invest some money in our stocks? Can you buy a piece of real estate? So if you've got a couple $100,000, most countries will let you in. So you've got straightforward residence by investment programs in Malaysia, in Indonesia, in Cambodia, in the Philippines. You've got a very expensive one in Singapore. If you're not willing to invest a lot, then you've missed the boat on that. That's proof of why you want to get your residence permits and citizenships early, because the prices tend to go up. Technically not in Southeast Asia. Hong Kong has brought back their program 4 times the price of what it once was a decade ago. Again, lots of people want residence permits. The prices go up. But at least in Asia, you can invest in stuff that you can sell later. You can get the money out later. You can use the house, whatever. But non-judgmental residence permits for entrepreneurs and investors. Now, Asia is not as likely to grant you citizenship. The Philippines is one of the few countries where you can actually naturalize if you do things right, you spend your time in the country. It's not a great passport, but it lets you have the permanent ability to live in the Philippines. But I think a lot of people get confused with, do I need residence? Do I need citizenship? How does it impact my taxes? That's what we help people with here at Nomad Capitalist, is putting all the puzzle pieces together, because there's a lot of unknown unknowns if you haven't done this before. And so if you're only working on the known unknowns, you're going to be missing a lot of things that could hamper your plan or might have you moving or getting residence somewhere else. So if you go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply, you'll learn how you can work with us to find the best places to move, the best residence permits to keep in your back pocket, the tax planning on how to make sure that you save as much money as possible when you move overseas, because Southeast Asia is generally, as I'll tell you in a minute, a more tax-friendly part of the world. You want to put all the pieces together. This is probably not a place to chase citizenship. And yet I think every Westerner needs a second citizenship, probably even a third these days, because of the policies that are happening in Western countries. But you don't necessarily want to get your citizenship where you move to. So we can help you figure out which country in Asia to go to, how you do your taxes, and then you get a citizenship somewhere else by investment, through your family tree, through whatever else. Go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply. Now let's talk about taxes. Thailand did make their tax friendliness a bit worse in the last year. I still think it's relatively friendly, again, if you're a high net worth entrepreneur or investor, because what Thailand has basically done is created something kind of sort of like a non-dom program in Europe, where the more money you make overseas and the less that you bring into the country, the less that you'll pay. Malaysia is pretty tax friendly. They say, oh, well, that's until 2027. I happen to think it'll stay tax friendly. Even if they don't, it'll be in the same category as Thailand. So again, the wealthier you are, the more money you're making every year. These Southeast Asian countries that are tweaking their tax plans a little bit to be a little bit less straightforward tax friendly, they'll work for you better. I think we've already come to a time where if you make $100,000 or $200,000 a year, all things included, you'd be better off living somewhere else than Thailand. You'd almost be better off living in Europe in some places, because you get the second citizenship, and the taxes in some of the European countries may be more favorable at that level than living in Thailand. But if you are 7 or 8 figure entrepreneur or investor, then generally speaking, taxation in Southeast Asia is good. Singapore is still relatively tax friendly, although again, expensive place to get into. Philippines is pretty tax friendly. Those are some of the best ones. What you also have in the region is banking. And so what I hear from some clients historically is, I don't want to be too far away from my banking. And so Singapore, one of the great asset protection hubs. Thailand is seen by some Asians as kind of a secondary asset protection hub. Hong Kong, for certain people who want to be further away from the Western financial system. I think very stable financial system. Maybe you like Hong Kong, maybe you don't, but you've got within the region, within close proximity, Singapore being the best, I would say, a number of potential places to hold your cash. If you move to Malaysia, you shouldn't move all your money to Malaysia. But even that said, I'll tell you, I think Malaysian banks are pretty darn stable. You don't really have bank failures the way you do in the United States, in this part of the world, or really anywhere in the world. But you have some very high quality banks. And so if you want to be close and you want access to investments in that part of the world, you're going to get that close to home. And I think Singapore, as I've said for years, our team talked about this on our Nomad Capitalist R&D channel not too long ago. Singapore is a lot less friction than Switzerland is. And so if you want that proximity to talk to your bank at the same time zone, you can. Investments are the next reason. And I think living in Southeast Asia, you're going to see how the world is changing. And you may not exactly know that or feel it until you do it, but I've been doing it for a long time at this point. And the perspective I get on how to improve my business, on where to make investments, it's a much different perspective than what you get on the BBC or CNN or Fox News or Sky News. It's a perspective you get by being on the ground. What's actually changing? And what's changing is not always that friendly to the West, but you might adjust your portfolio or where you want to get clients for your business or customers for your business by actually living on the ground and seeing. Now, in Singapore, obviously, it's a lot more like the United States or another developed country. There's not as many easy, low-hanging fruit opportunities. I told you since 2013 about all the low-hanging fruit opportunities in Cambodia. I think there's still some juice in Cambodia, Bangladesh, Nepal, technically South Asia, but I think lots of opportunity there. I think Vietnam still has some opportunity. To be seen what happens in places like Laos and how those open up in the years to come. If you're in that area, and if you travel around that area and you see what's going on, you're going to be, in my opinion, a better entrepreneur and investor in a way that sitting in a Western country is not going to make you. And I think that Asia is a more accessible growth market than, let's say, a lot of the African countries, which may see great growth also. Latin America, I think, will lag Asia in terms of performance as an investment. So if you're there, you're going to see that. And so lastly, connectivity. The time zone, if you're used to working with North America, it stinks. You could have, I'm in Kuala Lumpur. There's times you're up till 1, 2 in the morning. I mean, I'm at the point in my business where I don't talk to that many people anymore. We push things down through the organization, through leadership. And so I have them kind of adapt to me. They're calling me first thing in the morning from Europe, or if they're in Latin America, they're calling me end of the day or their evening. But if you're talking to folks, that is a challenge. And yet you can get around very easily the region. It's, I think, one of the best connected parts of the world, I guess second to Europe. You can get flights all over the region. You can see the investment opportunities. You can go and meet your banker. You can go and see the stuff you're investing in Cambodia. This year we've got Reed again coming to Nomad Capitalist Live talking about investing in Cambodia, investing in the next frontier markets in Asia. It's a lot easier to get there within the region, of course. But you've also got great connectivity to the US, to Europe, one of the best connected regions in the world. So I'm not pushing or promoting any of these particular countries. I do happen to live in Malaysia. I've been there for over a decade. That's my personal favorite. It may not be your favorite. The entire region may not be your favorite. But the good news is if you come to Nomad Capitalist, you're going to get a unique perspective. Most companies you go to, and I met a client, he was a client about 4 years ago, met him on the street by happenstance recently. And he said, I got to call you guys again because I've been talking to this asset protection guy or this trust lawyer, and they all have the one thing they kind of want to push on you. I'm not going to push Southeast Asia on you. All I want to do is raise awareness that you can be a 7 or 8 figure entrepreneur and have a great life. And I'll tell you what, I enjoy living there and having, I still call my friends, I just had a great lunch for $2. It was the most delicious thing I've ever eaten. And yet I can also go and have caviar and champagne at night. You get to choose the level of lifestyle you have because there's just so many different lifestyle options, so much great food. It's affordable, more money to put back in your portfolio. It just feels nice, feels comfortable. The people, by the way, the people are very nice in these places. Add that as a 10th reason. Malaysia in particular, I think, but people are nice in much of the region. So I'm not saying this is the place for you, but when you come to Nomad Capitalist as a client, you're going to get the perspective on everything where we actually represent you. We're not representing the one country that we do business in. We're not pushing Belize on you. If Southeast Asia isn't for you, that's fine. But it's worth knowing. Maybe it fits into your banking plan. Maybe it's part of your residence plan. Maybe it fits into your investment plan. It could be 1, 2, or all of those. But that's what we help people figure out. The unknown unknowns. Go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply. I think it's a region that should be on your radar. This is Kuala Lumpur. This is like a king you've ever seen.